I'm Jordan Hatfield, and this is Faster Film Critic. Today we discuss The Changeling with Kolter and Chase Fugel. The Changeling is a 1980 haunted house horror film where we learn how not to parent. Don't drown your kids. It's not only bad for them, but also for those who buy your house 50 years later. This film's directed by Peter Medak and stars George C. Scott, Tris Van Devere, and Melvin Douglas. Get in, we're going cinephiling. Kolter, what's up? Chase, man, how you doing?
Great.
That was great. Some dads suck.
That's right. So I gotta ask, what are your top 3 favorite haunted house movies?
Number 1, it's not a house, but The Shining.
Okay.
Gotta love that one.
I can see how that would fit in the haunted house category.
It's a big house.
Hotel,
It's a big
but
house.
okay.
Yeah,
People.
yeah, it's just a giant house.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is a
Okay.
great haunted house movie.
I did not expect you to say that, but I definitely see that.
Threw it in there to change things up. A little unexpected. Beetlejuice is a fun haunted house movie. And for my third, I grew up on it. This was like the scary movie growing up for my friend group. So I'd have to say the original, The Conjuring.
Okay.
So good. I remember the idea that they proposed in that where they had to do an exorcism not on a person, but on a house. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a haunted house movie.
Kolter, what about you?
Okay. We going number 1, number 3, number 2, number 1.
No particular order.
All right.
Just throw 3 out there.
Okay. 3 is one I saw recently. It's more of an independent film. We Are Still Here. Pretty effective in terms of setup and some pretty pants-crapping jump scares that are really good. Number 2. Nicole Kidman's The Others from 2001. I thought was pretty nice little twisty turny there at the end.
It's great.
Yeah.
Number 1, numero uno of all time. I'm going The Poltergeist, man. That one still shakes me when I watch it now.
Oh, classic.
And great cast, great kind of simple setup. Nothing too crazy in terms. Well, it gets crazy towards the end, but it's a fairly straightforward affair until things hit the fan, rather, so to speak.
So I'm a little surprised there's less overlap here than I expected. My 3, in no particular order, would be The Others,
Okay.
The Changeling,
Okay. Sure.
Really?
and Evil Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Damn it. Yeah. I was
Evil
gonna-
Dead,
Evil
man.
Dead.
Evil
Evil
Dead's
Dead is great.
Of course.
So no particular order, but The Changeling is what we're talking about today. Do you want to know something interesting? The Changeling did not do well when it came out in 1980.
It's weird.
Really?
I know, isn't it?
It's so weird how some old movies hit so hard today, and you think, why didn't this catch on back in the day? Weird.
And I think it's really kind of the slasher movement that happened in the early 80s. We got Halloween from John Carpenter in 1978. You know, in 1980, we got Friday the 13th. We got Maniac. Like, that was really moving into kind of the slasher era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, here comes this haunted house movie that isn't a hack-em-up film. It's really more atmospheric and unsettling.
Yeah.
And I just think people were just looking for something else in the 80s. And so fast forward to today, people are looking backwards, and all of a sudden, and I shouldn't say today, I mean, this has been on a lot of people's radar for a long time, but The Changeling has gotten much bigger years after it came out as opposed to...
Do you know what I heard? Martin Scorsese put it on his top 11 scariest movies of all time list.
He did. It was number 6.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I could absolutely see why.
I didn't find it so scary. I thought it was a better mystery than a scary movie.
So Neve Campbell from Scream, she said it was the scariest movie she ever saw after recording Scream.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people that have put this high on their
Interesting.
scary list.
I don't think it would even touch my scary list, to be honest.
Me neither.
Definitely has some effective scares in it. But yeah, it's just as much a mystery, I think.
I do love that it is not one of those jump scare kind of movies.
Right.
No, it's a slower burn. It's atmospheric.
It's subtle.
It's unsettling.
Yeah.
You know, there are some moments that are frightening, that are a little bit more intense, but they're few and far between. And it is, Kolter, I think it was you that just mentioned it's kind of more of a mystery horror
Yeah,
film.
it is. I mean, up until the end, I mean, you're kind of following the mystery itself, but up until the end, you're still not quite sure if things are playing out to the satisfaction of the spirit. That sort of makes sense. George C. Scott's character is like trying to do the right things, and at some point he comes back to the house. He's like, "What do you want from me? What am I missing?" and I thought that was
good.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, I mean, that's what makes some of these haunted house. It can't just be just a haunted house. I mean, it's the best ones are always there's something else kind of going on, and I don't know, man. I think movies back then treated their audiences so much differently than modern movies do now. People had patience back then, and they weren't
so true.
looking for that instant gratification. And I loved it. I'm glad I came across it.
Yeah, here's something really cool about The Changeling. Did you know this is based on, quote, a true story, unquote?
No, no idea.
Wow.
Yeah, so the writer, Russell Hunter, lived in a mansion in Denver, Colorado. And he claimed that the place was haunted, and some of the events that happened to him there is what motivated him writing this film. For example, he claims that he found a hidden room, and inside of that hidden room was an old wheelchair.
Wow.
Kind of cool, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I love the investigative kind of approach to. It's not just anybody else would run out of that house screaming, "Get in the car! Never going back!" Who cares if I left something? Like, he's rattled by it, but he's more like, in a very George C. Scott, like, I want to get to the bottom of this. I love he goes to like historical records and blueprints and kind of tracks down all these events and puts them together. And then there's that kind of unexpected confrontation between him and the senator at the end where, I might be jumping too far ahead here, but to say the way it played out was interesting. It was intriguing and refreshing, I think.
I really do like this film. What do you guys think? You've seen it recently for this podcast, in preparation for this podcast.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of it? It didn't make your top 3 list for either of you, but tell me what you liked about this film.
I found some elements. Well, let me start with the way the movie was introduced to me. It was kind of advertised to me as a horror, scary movie. So I went in expecting that. And I didn't find the movie scary at all. And even some of the scary moments, I was disappointed to find campy. So they weren't really effective for me. There's a lot that I like here. I love the whole elegant feel of the movie, the atmosphere, the piano music. And it creates a great echo chamber for the grief. I think it's so good, the way that it works. But the campiness clashes with that elegance so much. It was really hard to look past. So that was my main problem with the movie.
Campy. That's not how I interpreted this film. That's not what I thought coming out of it all. But
the scary elements I found campy with. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but I think you could probably guess what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Yeah, no, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I have an idea. The only campy part that I thought, because when you said campy, I thought, well, I didn't find it particularly campy. There was one scene where George C. Scott's lady friend, we're not quite sure what's going on between those two. At some point late in the film, things are really heated up, and they've stirred a bunch of stuff up, and the spirit is really active, and she's being chased. She's being chased down the hallway and around the corner by this little tiny wheelchair. And I thought, yeah, that's spooky, but yeah, it's scary. But all the crap that happened before that was that far, this whole seance thing and the rattling of furniture and doors shutting, being chased by a little tiny wheelchair. I thought, well, that's kind of cute. That's not too scary. It's just, so I think that's, if I had to pick a silly part, maybe it was that one.
That's funny because the silly part that I would pick is different than both of these. It was the Daddy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Daddy. That with the wheelchair part.
My name is Joseph. Carmichael.
Gosh. You're a little too good at that. Stop that stuff.
Yeah, I was like, that didn't work so much for me. I did really enjoy this film. I love the atmospheric horror that it presents.
Yeah.
I think a good haunted house movie is just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question. Do either of you believe in the paranormal?
Oh, man. I've had maybe one experience that I would have classified as paranormal, and I quickly tried to recreate the thing that happened. This is going to sound really stupid. I was at a job in the Air Force, and we were out at some big, I can't say, or I'd have to, I don't want to have to do that, so I can't give away too many details here. I'm filling up a glass full of water. I put the glass down on a table, and it was like an ice machine thing, so I scooped the ice out and put it on the table, and the glass slid like about a foot by itself right in front of me. The first thing I did was, it really scared me. The first thing I thought was there had to be a small fleck of ice on the bottom of this glass. It had just happened to the counter was slightly at a slant and I couldn't see. The first thing I did was try to like debunk it. Well, it had to have been some kind of natural thing. Of course, I've heard tons of stories. There was plenty of places on base that were allegedly haunted where I was at. Heard lots of things, but that's about the only thing I've experienced, if you could even call it that. But I do think I believe in something. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's spirits or ghosts. For all I know, it's the bending of time and space and certain. Yeah, we can go down a rabbit hole with that. But short answer is kind of.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I'm right with you, Kolter. I believe in something, but I can't quite figure out what it is.
So I'm a skeptic. I'm a total skeptic.
Nothing.
Well, hold on. I'm a skeptic, and most of the time when I hear stories, I'm like, yeah. I'm not saying I don't believe. I'm just skeptical. I mean, I know people who say that ghosts do their dishes for them. You know what I mean? It's just like,
How nice.
most of it's crazy.
Well, I think that's what
Yeah.
Kolter's ghost was trying to do.
Right, his dishes,
Maybe.
exactly. Kolter's who I was talking about.
Yeah. I forgot
Just
one
kidding.
detail. It didn't slide across the counter until I was about to pour some orange Kool-Aid, because I'm classy like that, into the cup. And then as soon as the liquid escaped the pitcher and the glass moved, I thought, okay, whatever did that, or nothing that did that. It's just all in my head. But sorry, one stupid detail I left out.
Instead of cleaning your dishes, it's just trying to keep them clean.
Yeah, it's trying to keep the dishes from getting dirty.
Yeah,
It's preemptively working on your dishes. Yeah, I mean, so I'm just a skeptic. I hear stories all the time, and I just think, our subconscious is powerful. Not powerful enough to move glasses, obviously,
Right.
but there's a lot of things that we hear, we think we see, and I'm a skeptic. However, when I was young, I had an experience that scared me to death. And at the time, I didn't think it was paranormal. I thought it was someone breaking into my house. It took place in the middle of the night. I thought it was an intruder.
Yeah.
But after the fact, I look back, and there was no sign of a break-in. My father and I went through the whole house. We couldn't find any sign of a break-in. I was convinced something was in my house, and at that point, I started to believe it was paranormal. And it scared me so bad. It took me years to recover. And I can hear somebody saying, those were just some teenage hormones that, in a fit of rage, crawl up your spinal cord and just wreak havoc in the middle of the night. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And maybe that's true. I don't know. But let me tell you where I'm going with this story. A couple years ago, my wife and I were in Georgia, Savannah, Georgia. And I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but it's a really cool town. I would highly recommend you check it out. It's got kind of an ugly history, but there's a lot of haunted, ghosty stories there, and the town kind of embraces it. It's really cool. Check it out. So we're there, and we're walking down the street, and we happen to go by a little haunted shop, and there's a psychic in there. And my wife and I are like, hey, let's go get our cards read or something just for fun. So we step inside this little shop, and the psychic is there, and he's available, and he'll only take us one at a time. So he takes my wife first. She goes back. When she comes out, I'm sure he probably revealed to her that marrying me was a huge mistake, and she was trying to figure out how to get out of that. But for me, he's like, I want you to think of a question. Be thinking of a question. So I walk back in there. It's my turn, and I don't know what to ask. I'm a skeptic. I don't believe a lot of this stuff, but I'm going to play along. So I asked the first question that comes to my mind, which was, I had an event that happened to me when I was young, and it scared me really bad. Can you tell me anything about that?
That's all you asked.
That's all I asked. Actually, no. He followed up with a little bit of detail, a little bit of questions.
Okay.
He followed up with, well, what was the event? What was happening? And so I kind of explained the event to him. So he knew what happened to me. And he said, I'm not getting anything powerful here. I believe that it was just a friendly entity that was passing through, and it just happened to scare you.
Okay.
But something did happen to your older brother, and it scared him so bad. This was malevolent, and it was after him. And then he proceeded to tell me in detail an event that my brother had shared with me in our house when he was young that he wasn't openly talking about. And guys, I don't know. That was wild. That tripped me out.
Yeah.
So
That is crazy. How do you call yourself a skeptic after that?
good question.
That's a fair question.
Yeah, that is a fair
Yeah.
question. I can't explain it, and I'm not one to just run to crazy theories. I can't explain it.
Wow.
And so I don't know what it is. I can't say for sure it's one thing. I can't say it's for sure.
I think crazy stories call for crazy theories.
Well, I'll give you that.
Well, that's one thing to have the experience. It's something else entirely to have somebody else tap into that experience that has no relation to you, and you're separated by X amount of years. To not only kind of key in on what you're talking about, but add an element or a detail that they did not have prior knowledge of. It's things like that really give me pause and kind of go, man. I often hear stories like this that are really rich in detail, and people are really emotionally moved by them from people that I would consider to be intelligent, both intellectually, emotionally, and yeah, man, that's the stuff that kind of makes me go, well, that's why I don't rule it out.
Well, it definitely gave me a shiver down my spine, and I went and talked to my brother about it, and it gave him a shiver, right? He was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And again, we talked about it in more detail, and some of the things that this psychic was telling me, my brother was like, yes, like this is absolutely what happened, and this is absolutely how I felt. Pretty wild. It kind of reminded me of the psychic scene in The Changeling, which was one of my favorite scenes of the film.
It was cool.
Yeah, when John Russell discovers there's an entity in his house, he reaches out to the psychic, reaches out to this medium. She comes in and she's writing on the paper, and every once in a while she's asking questions. Tell us your name. Tell us your name. And then all of a sudden the pencil. I thought that was such a cool scene. That was probably my favorite scene of the movie.
It was a cool scene.
Yeah, it was really inventive to have this like kind of free association version of someone writing like she was some kind of human meter, and then
Kolter, you mentioned earlier that there was a little bit of a crazy love connection between John Russell and Claire Norman.
Yeah.
You were saying that you didn't quite know what was happening between these two characters?
Something is implied, but yeah.
Did you know that they got freaky in real life?
No, I did not.
George C. Scott and Trish Vanderveer?
Was it in the house?
Well, they were married.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, they were married. George C. Scott and Trish Vanderveer were married.
Okay.
At the time of the filming of this movie, they were married. Isn't that cool?
Well, it lends itself to good chemistry.
So tell me this, guys. What did you think the biggest weakness of the film was? If you could change something about this film, what would you change? Neither of you listed this as in your top 3 haunted house movies.
I think the reason why it didn't make top 3 is because I've just seen it, so it's still maybe sinking in a little bit. In my own defense, I think one of the things.
Was this your first time seeing it?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
No, that's why that's why I love having recommendations made for stuff like this, because it's something I probably would have stumbled upon eventually anyway. I love watching older movies as it is. The thing that tripped me up a little bit plot-wise, good God, would any normal person hang out in a house with the doors constantly shutting and chandeliers shaking and disembodied voices and wheelchairs chasing you around? Would you really hang out to see what you could do to help? But that's a suspension of disbelief that you have to kind of just go with in many movies, including something like this.
I hear what you're saying there. I think of The Woman in Black, for example. There's things in that film that are absolutely terrifying. And Daniel Radcliffe's character keeps going back to the house, and he doesn't seem to be bugged by it. However, in this film, I felt a little bit differently. I hear what you're saying, Kolter, and that happens in just about every haunted house movie, just about every horror movie, really.
Sure.
And I hear you. But here, I didn't feel like John Russell was going back into the house or staying in the house out of lunacy. Sure. I felt like John Russell was a man of immense courage.
Right.
And it didn't frighten him.
Now that you mention that, not only is that a good point, but I think that ties to, this is a guy who's a little battle-hardened by life experiences. He lost his own wife and child in a tragic accident. So maybe he was just a little bit more, I don't know, open-minded or...
Again, The Woman in Black, Daniel Radcliffe's character, he's a little shrimpy dude, right? He's bailing. The first time he hears a creak that he thinks is not, he is out of there. But George C. Scott is such a tough guy.
Yeah.
And in this film, he's depicted of a man with so much courage. So you complain about that, but you complain about it in a different way.
Yeah.
I'm also complaining about that. That also didn't work for me, but it worked for me in a different way. I just find that interesting. The reason why it didn't work for me is because John Russell is a man of so much courage, it almost gave me courage as the viewer.
Oh.
It wasn't as scary because John Russell wasn't scared.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe that's why they had to throw the lady getting chased by the baby wheelchair in just to give you something to...
Yeah, somebody in the film needed to be scared.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest complaint with this movie is I just wish it was scarier. I think if John Russell would have been more scared himself, it would have allowed me to participate in that fear a little bit more, and the film would have been more intense. And that's what this film was lacking. I still love this film. I still put it in my top 3 favorite haunted house movies, but I think it needed more intensity if it's going to be in my top 5 or top 10 favorite horror movies, which it's not.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think it definitely lacked intensity. I had a hard time with the slow-paced feel of the film.
It's a slower burn for sure.
Yeah. My biggest problem was with the supernatural element of the film. You know, the spirit or whatever you want to call it. It's able to interact with the real world. It's able to slam doors throughout the whole house, break windows. There's even a scene where it's implied that it flips a car and kills a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cora. You're talking about the railroad car?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cora.
Yeah. But it's not able to communicate how to save itself.
That's a good point.
It's not able to...
Yeah.
It's not able to say anything more than, Daddy, Joseph Carmichael.
Yeah.
Go check the well.
It's what...
Well, screw you haters. I loved this film. I really liked it. I thought it was a good time. I think it's an underrated film. I think it's an underseen film. Case in point, Kolter, you're just barely seeing this. I think this is a movie that every horror fan needs to see. I think it absolutely deserves that. Yeah.
I wouldn't consider it a horror movie. I would consider it
a comedy.
A mystery / comedy.
I mean, come on, it deals with paranormal. That's There's horror aspects for sure.
There's horror aspects for sure, but I would definitely classify it as a mystery.
I mean, there's mystery elements. And by the way, I thought the mystery elements really worked. You brought up Cora earlier. I thought it was kind of cool that at first they were blaming another death and they were kind of investigating that a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cool aspect. Only to find out that it wasn't Cora, that it was somebody else. I thought the whole senator scene, that really worked for me. I really enjoyed that aspect of the film.
Yeah, it was cool. Yeah, it was different. I've not, honestly can say I haven't quite seen anything like it.
You know, one thing as I talk about this movie with other people, one thing that's constantly brought up is the mansion and how cool this mansion is, how beautiful the mansion is.
It's amazing.
I hate to spoil it for people, but this mansion doesn't exist. This was just a facade that was built and placed in front of another modern home in Vancouver. And all of the internal shots were shot in a studio. That mansion doesn't exist. Anything else you guys would like to add about this film?
No, other than I think George C. Scott seems to kind of lend his talents well to this genre. You guys have seen Exorcist 3, I assume.
Yeah, the only other horror film that George C. Scott played in, by the way, Exorcist 3.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, if he had gotten kind of, because I could see him getting kind of typecast in roles like this. Obviously, that's a different film. That, man, talk about showcasing his talent in that one. But
he's great. Yeah, he's great.
No, it was cool. Interesting casting choice, and cool setting and interesting mystery that pays off in a cool way, and I dug it.
Good. Let's go ahead and rate it. 1 out of 5. What'd you guys think?
I'm going to grade this a 1 through 5 as a haunted house movie, and in that case, I'm going to be generous. I'm going to give it a 4. I really loved it.
Wow.
Good, man. 4. Good.
Yeah.
I love that you loved it.
I'm a real outlier on this one. I'm feeling 2.5.
2.5.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I guess it just doesn't work so much with the younger generations.
Don't worry, Chase. You'll mature. I really like this film. I'm going to give it a 3.5. I thought it was a must-see horror film for any fan of the genre. One of the better haunted house movies out there. Yes, it's a slower burn, but George C. Scott's amazing. I thought the story was interesting and engaging. Minus a couple parts that are a little cheesy. I thought it was really good at building up kind of a creepy atmosphere. So 3.5.
Well, Martin Scorsese would agree with you.
Yeah, he would.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of psychological mystery or horror films, I would highly recommend Nicholas Roeg's 1973 film, Don't Look Now. Like The Changeling, it explores themes of grief, guilt, and psychological horror with a slow burn approach. But Don't Look Now takes it to a whole new level. It's a must-watch movie for anyone who loves haunting, thought-provoking cinema.
Thank you for listening to Faster Film Critic, and please join us next episode when we discuss one of my personal favorite Halloween films, Dark Night of the Scarecrow from 1981, directed by Frank De Felitta. This film is a gem, and I cannot wait to talk about it. You can also follow us on Letterboxd, Cinetrack, and Instagram. Email us at fasterfilmcritic@gmail.com. Hit us up if you have any questions, comments, feedback, or review requests, and please share this episode with your movie-loving friends.